Imagine a luxurious felucca gliding down the shimmering Nile, its passengers cloaked in wealth and secrets. A dazzling diamond necklace vanishes in the night. A priceless scarab amulet disappears, and a brilliant archaeologist lies dead poisoned in his cabin. Who among this elite circle of travelers is a thief, a murderer, or both? Enter Hercule Poirot, the meticulous Belgian detective, whose little grey cells unravel a web of lies, jealousy, and greed. Was it the imperious heiress, betrayed by her own kin, the enigmatic Contessa, hiding a dark past, or the grieving assistant, consumed by unrequited love? As the Nefertiti sails toward a swan, every clue black lace, a missing key. A cryptic note pulls you deeper into a mystery where no one is what they seem. Will Poirot's logic pierce the shadows before another crime strikes? Dive into Hercule. Poirot's Pyramid Peril, Death on the Nile, a tale of suspense, betrayal, and a shocking reveal that will keep you guessing until the final twist. Chapter 1. The felucca's gentle drift. The Nile stretched before the felucca, like a ribbon of molten silver, its surface glinting under the Egyptian sun. The Nefertiti, a luxurious riverboat chartered for an exclusive cruise, glided through the waters with an elegance that belied the tensions simmering among its passengers. It was April 1929, and the air carried the faint scent of lotus blossoms mingling with the dry, earthy warmth of the desert beyond. The passengers, a carefully curated group of wealthy Britons, Americans, and a smattering of European aristocrats, reclined under the shaded canopy, sipping chilled lemonade and exchanging polite banalities, yet, beneath the veneer of civility, a current of unease rippled through the group, as though the river itself whispered secrets it could not keep. Captain Arthur Hastings, Hercule Poirot's steadfast friend and occasional chronicler, leaned against the railing, his straw hat tilted, to shield his eyes from the relentless sun. He joined the cruise at Poirot's insistence, though the detective himself had not yet appeared. A little holiday, mon ami, Poirot had said with that infuriating twinkle in his eye, to refresh the little grey cells. Hastings, ever susceptible to Poirot's whims, had agreed, though he suspected there was more to this journey than a mere respite. The Nefertiti was no ordinary vessel. It was a floating microcosm of ambition, envy, and hidden motives, a perfect stage. For the drama Poirot seemed to anticipate, the passenger list was a study in contrasts. At the centre of the group was Lady Evelyn Carver, a widowed heiress whose fortune in diamond mines had made her the envy of London society. Her sharp wit and sharper tongue were matched only by her penchant for extravagant jewellery which sparkled ostentatiously against her sun-kissed skin. Beside her sat her nephew, Gerald Carver, a nervous young man in his late 20s, whose anxious glances suggested he was perpetually awaiting some catastrophe. Across from them, Dr. Felix Langston, a renowned archaeologist, clutched a leather notebook, muttering about the ruins they would visit at Abu Simbel. His assistant, Miss Clara Wren, a mousy woman with spectacles, scribbled notes at his side, her eyes darting nervously toward Gerald. Then there was Mr. Vincent Marlowe, an American businessman whose brash demeanour and loud laugh grated on the more reserved passengers. His wife, Mrs. Lillian Marlowe, a former actress, draped herself elegantly across a wicker chair, her beauty undimmed by the heat. The Italian Contessa di Verona, a mysterious figure swathed in black lace despite the warmth, sipped a drink, in silence, her dark eyes scanning the group with an intensity that made Hastings uneasy. Rounding out the party were Mr. Reginald Tate, a retired solicitor with a penchant for pontificating, and his daughter, Miss Beatrice Tate, whose quiet demeanour hid a keen intelligence. The crew, too, added to the tapestry of the Nefertiti. Captain Mahmoud, a dignified Egyptian with a penchant for precision, steered the felucca with quiet authority. His first mate, a weary young man named Hassan, moved silently among the passengers, refilling glasses and adjusting cushions. The cook, Madame Lefebvre, a French woman of indeterminate age, presided over the galley with a sternness that discouraged idle chatter. Hastings, ever observant in his own way, noted the undercurrents of tension. Gerald Carver's fingers twitched as he glanced at his aunt's diamond necklace, a piece said to be worth a king's ransom. Dr. Langston's mutterings grew sharper. When Mr. Marlowe boasted about his investments in Egyptian antiquities, the Countess's gaze lingered long on Mrs. Marlowe, who seemed oblivious to the scrutiny, and Miss Tate, though silent, watched everyone with a quiet intensity that reminded Hastings of Poirot himself. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a golden glow over the Nile, the passengers gathered for dinner on the deck. The table was set with crisp linens and gleaming silver, the air filled with the aroma of Madame Lefebvre's spiced lamb and saffron rice. Conversation flowed, though it was punctuated by strained silences. Lady Carver dominated the discussion, regaling the group with tales of her travels, while Mr. Marlowe interrupted with boasts about his business ventures. Dr. Langston, visibly irritated, clutched his notebook as though it were a lifeline. It was during this meal that the first hint of trouble emerged, as her son served the deserted delicate almond pastry, drizzled with honey. Lady Carver reached for her necklace, a habit she had displayed throughout the evening. Her fingers froze, and her face paled. "My necklace," she gasped, her voice cutting through the chatter. "It's gone." The table fell silent. Every eye turned to Lady Carver, whose hand trembled as she touched her bare throat. The necklace, a dazzling array of diamonds set in gold, had been the centerpiece of her ensemble. Its absence was as conspicuous as a missing star in the night sky. "Impossible," Gerald stammered, rising from his seat. "You were wearing it just moments ago, Aunt Evelyn." "I know I was," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Someone has taken it." The accusation hung in the air, heavy as the desert heat. Captain Mahmoud stepped forward, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the rising panic. "Please, Lady Carver, let us search the deck. It may have fallen." But Hastings, with his soldiers' instinct, sensed this was no mere accident. The glances exchanged among the passengers, some nervous, some calculating, suggested a deeper game. He thought of Poirot, who would no doubt have noticed the precise moment the necklace vanished, and wished fervently for his friend's presence. The search yielded nothing. The necklace, valued at tens of thousands of pounds, had vanished as completely as if the Nile itself had swallowed it. Lady Carver's outrage grew, her voice rising as she demanded answers. "One of you," she said, her gaze sweeping the table, "is a thief." The word lingered, a challenge and a threat. Mr. Marlowe laughed nervously, suggesting it was a prank, but his wife's sharp glance silenced him. Dr. Langston clutched his notebook tighter, while Miss Wren's hands shook as she adjusted her spectacles. The Countess's lips curved in a faint, enigmatic smile, and Miss Tate's eyes flickered with something Hastings couldn't quite place. As the evening drew to a close, the passengers retired to their cabins, the atmosphere thick with suspicion. Hastings remained on deck, staring at the moonlit Nile, his mind racing. The theft of the necklace was no trifling matter. It was a spark that could ignite a far greater conflagration. He recalled Poirot's words, "The little grey cells, Hastings. They must always be alert, for crime does not announce itself with a fanfare." As if summoned by the thought, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his linen suit and straw hat, stepped onto the deck. His moustache perfectly waxed despite the hour. His green eyes gleamed with amusement as he regarded Hastings. "Mon ami," Poirot said, his voice a melodic purr, "you look troubled. Has the Nile's tranquility been disturbed?" Hastings recounted the evening's events, from the glittering company to the vanishing necklace. Poirot listened, his head tilted, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. When Hastings finished, Poirot nodded slowly. "A necklace, you say? A trifle, perhaps, but significant. The theft is but the prelude. Hastings, mark my words, there is more to come." "Why are you here, Poirot?" Hastings asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "You didn't join us for dinner." Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "I was detained, mon ami, by a matter of some delicacy. But now I am here, and I sense that the Nefertiti will provide a most intriguing puzzle. The little grey cells, they are already at work." As the felucca glided onward, the Nile's gentle ripples seemed to mock the tension aboard. Hastings felt a chill. Despite the warm night air, Poirot's presence was both a comfort and a warning. Where the little Belgian went, murder often followed. Chapter 2. The shadow of death. The morning sun cast a golden haze over the Nile, its rays piercing the mist that clung to the river's surface like a shroud. The Nefertiti continued its serene journey toward Abu Simbel, but the tranquility of the previous evening had vanished, replaced by a palpable tension that hung over the passengers like a storm cloud. The theft of Lady Carver's diamond necklace had set tongues wagging and suspicions flaring, and the breakfast table was a study in strained civility. Captain Arthur Hastings, nursing a cup of strong coffee, observed the group with a growing sense of unease. Hercule Poirot, seated beside him, sipped his tisane with an air of serene detachment, his sharp green eyes missing nothing. The passengers gathered on the deck, their faces betraying a mix of irritation, curiosity, and barely concealed guilt. Lady Evelyn Carver, resplendent in a cream-coloured linen dress but noticeably bereft of her usual jewellery, presided over the table with an imperious air. Her nephew, Gerald Carver, sat hunched, his fingers drumming nervously on the tablecloth. Dr. Felix Langston, his leather notebook open before him, scribbled furiously, pausing only to cast suspicious glances at the others. His assistant, Miss Clara Wren, hovered at his side, her spectacles glinting as she adjusted them repeatedly. Mr. Vincent Marlowe, the American businessman, spoke loudly about the beauty of the Nile, while his wife, Lillian, toyed with her fruit salad, her expression unreadable. The Contessa di Verona, shrouded in black despite the heat, sipped her coffee in silence, her dark eyes flickering over the group. Mr. Reginald Tate, the retired solicitor, expounded on the legal ramifications of theft, while his daughter, Beatrice, listened quietly, her gaze sharp and assessing Captain Mahmoud, ever the consummate host. In short, the meal proceeded smoothly, though his first mate, Hassan, moved with a wariness that suggested he, too, felt the undercurrent of distrust. Madame Lefevere's breakfast spread freshly baked flatbreads, figs, and a fragrant yogurt laced with honey was impeccable, yet few seemed to have an appetite. The conversation, when it occurred, was stilted, punctuated by awkward silences, and pointed remarks about the missing necklace. Hercule Poirot, however, seemed unperturbed. He dabbed his lips with a napkin, his movements precise, and leaned back in his chair. A most curious affair, this theft, he remarked, his voice soft but carrying. A necklace does not vanish into the air, non. It requires a hand, a purpose, a moment of opportunity. Lady Carver's eyes narrowed. Are you suggesting one of us is a common thief, Monsieur Poirot? Not common, madam. Poirot replied, his moustache twitching with a faint smile. Nothing about this affair is common. But a thief, oui. There is one among us, or perhaps something more. His words hung in the air, and Hastings felt a chill despite the morning warmth. Poirot's knack for seeing beyond the obvious had always unnerved him, and now, with the passengers' nerves already frayed, the detective's insinuation stirred a restless energy. The meal was interrupted by a sudden cry from the lower deck. Hassan, the first mate, appeared at the top of the stairs, his face ashen. Captain Mahmoud, he called, his voice trembling, you must come quickly. The passengers froze, their eyes darting to one another. Captain Mahmoud rose, his calm demeanour unshaken, and followed Hassan below deck. Poirot, with a glance at Hastings, set down his cup and stood. Come, mon ami, he said quietly. The little grey cells, they sense a development. Hastings followed, his heart pounding as the other passengers trailed behind, their curiosity overcoming their reluctance. They descended to the narrow corridor leading to the cabins, where a small crowd of crew members had gathered outside. One of the doors, Captain Mahmoud stood before it, his expression grave. It is Dr. Langston, he said, his voice low. He is dead. A collective gasp rose from the group. Miss Wren let out a stifled sob, clutching her spectacles, while Gerald Carver's face paled to a sickly white. Lady Carver gripped her nephew's arm, her lips pressed into a thin line. Mr. Marlowe muttered something under his breath, and his wife's hand flew to her mouth. The Countess's eyes narrowed, and Beatrice Tate's calm facade faltered for a moment, revealing a flicker of shock. Poirot stepped forward, his small frame commanding the space. "Permit me, Captain," he said, his tone polite but firm. Mahmoud nodded, stepping aside to allow Poirot and Hastings to enter the cabin. Doctor Felix Langston lay sprawled across the narrow bed, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. His leather notebook, so often clutched in his hands, lay open on the floor, its pages scattered. A small glass vial, empty but for a faint residue, rested on the bedside table beside a half-drunk cup of tea. The room was otherwise orderly, the archaeologist's belongings neatly arranged, a stark contrast to the chaos of his lifeless form. Poirot knelt beside the body, his movements precise and deliberate. He examined the vial, sniffing it carefully, then turned his attention to the teacup. "Poison, most likely," he murmured, his eyes narrowing. "The odor is faint, but unmistakable. Cyanide, perhaps, or something equally swift." Hastings, standing by the door, felt a wave of nausea. "Poison," he echoed. "But who, how?" Poirot rose, dusting his hands. "That, mon ami, is the question. The how is simple. The poison was in the tea or perhaps the vial. The who and the why, those are the puzzles we must solve." Captain Mahmoud, who had joined them, spoke quietly. "Dr. Langston retired to his cabin after dinner last night. He was seen by Hassan at approximately 10 o'clock, when he requested a pot of tea. No one reported seeing him after that." Poirot nodded, his gaze sweeping the room. He picked up the notebook, flipping through its pages. "Hieroglyphs, maps, notes on the tombs at Abu Simbel," he said softly. Dr. Langston was a man consumed by his work. But was his work the motive for his death, or something more personal? The passengers, clustered outside the door, began to murmur. Lady Carver's voice cut through the din. "This is outrageous. First my necklace, now a murder. What kind of ship is this?" Poirot turned, his expression calm but piercing. "A ship, madam, where secrets do not remain hidden for long. Hercule Poirot is here, and he will uncover the truth." The group dispersed, some returning to the deck, others lingering in the corridor whispering. Miss Wren, tears streaming down her face, clutched Poirot's sleeve. "He was a brilliant man," she said, her voice breaking. "Who would do this?" Poirot patted her hand gently. "Mademoiselle, grief clouds the mind, but clarity will come. Tell me, when did you last see Dr. Langston?" "Last night, after dinner," she replied, wiping her eyes. "He was upset about the necklace. He said it was a distraction, that we had more important work to focus on. And you, mademoiselle, what did you do after dinner?" I went to my cabin to transcribe his notes. I heard nothing, saw nothing." Her voice trembled, and Poirot nodded, releasing her hand. As the passengers returned to the deck, Hastings followed Poirot, who paused to examine the corridor. "Notice, Hastings," he said, pointing to a small stain on the carpet near Langston's door. "Tea, perhaps, spilled in haste. And there," he gestured to a faint scuff mark on the wall, a sign of struggle, or merely carelessness. We shall see. Back on deck, the atmosphere was electric with fear and suspicion. Mr. Marlowe demanded that the ship turn back to Cairo, but Captain Mahmoud explained that the nearest authorities were at Aswan, still a day's journey away. Poirot, meanwhile, moved among the passengers, his questions gentle but probing. He asked Gerald about his aunt's necklace, noting the young man's nervous stammer. He inquired about Mrs. Marlowe's evening, observing her guarded responses. The Contessa, when questioned, offered only cryptic smiles, while Beatrice Tate answered with a precision that intrigued him. As the sun climbed higher, the Nefertiti sailed on, its passengers trapped in a web of doubt and fear. Hastings watched, Poirot marveling at his calm amidst the storm. "Do you think the necklace and the murder are connected?" he asked. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Mon ami, in a puzzle such as this, everything is connected. The theft was the spark, the murder, the flame. But the truth, that lies in the shadows, waiting for Hercule Poirot to bring it into the light." Chapter 3, the arrival of Poirot Nefertiti glided onward, its prow cutting through the Nile's shimmering surface, but the serenity of the river stood in stark contrast to the turmoil aboard. The death of Dr. Felix Langston had transformed the luxurious felucca into a floating prison, where every glance was laced with suspicion and every word weighed for hidden meaning. The passengers, confined to the deck and their cabins, moved with the wariness of those who knew a killer walked among them. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing at the railing, felt the weight of the morning's discovery pressing upon him. The image of Langston's lifeless body, the empty vial, and the scattered notebook haunted his thoughts. But it was Hercule Poirot's calm assurance that anchored him amidst the storm. Poirot, immaculate as ever in his pristine linen suit, stood near the breakfast table, now cleared of its dishes. His small, precise hands were clasped behind his back, and his green eyes surveyed the passengers with a quiet intensity that made even the boldest among them falter. The group had gathered at Captain Mahmoud's insistence, though their reluctance was palpable. Lady Evelyn Carver sat rigidly, her lips pursed, her eyes still flashing with indignation over her stolen necklace. Gerald Carver, her nephew, fidgeted beside her, his hands twisting a napkin into knots. Miss Clara Wren, Dr. Langston's assistant, clutched a handkerchief, her red-rimmed eyes betraying her grief. Mr. Vincent Marlowe paced near the railing, his brash demeanour subdued, while his wife, Lillian, sat with a studied elegance, her face a mask of composure. The Contessa di Verona, her black lace shawl draped like a shadow, watched the proceedings with an enigmatic calm. Mr. Reginald Tate, the solicitor, cleared his throat repeatedly as if preparing to deliver a lecture, while his daughter, Beatrice, observed silently, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Captain Mahmoud addressed the group, his voice steady but grave. Until we reach Aswan, where the authorities can be notified, we must maintain order. Monsieur Poirot, a detective of great renown, has kindly offered to assist in this matter. I ask for your cooperation. A murmur rippled through the group. Mr. Marlowe snorted. A detective? What good's a detective on a boat full of strangers? For all we know, he's in on it. Poirot's mustache twitched, but his expression remained serene. Monsieur Marlowe, Hercule Poirot is never in on it, as you say. My purpose is to uncover the truth, and the truth, it is like the Nile deep, relentless, and always flowing toward its destination. Hastings suppressed a smile. Poirot's penchant for grand metaphors never failed to amuse him, even in the gravest of circumstances. The detective stepped forward, his small frame commanding the attention of all. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, a man is dead, and a valuable necklace has vanished. These events, they are not accidents. They are the work of a mind, perhaps more than one. I will ask questions, and I will observe. You will answer, and you will be truthful. For the little grey cells of Hercule Poirot, they do not tolerate deception. Lady Carver's voice cut through the silence. This is preposterous. My necklace is still missing, and now you're suggesting we're all suspects in a murder? I demand to know what you intend to do about it. Poirot inclined his head. Madam, your necklace is a matter of great interest, but the death of Dr. Langston takes precedence. Rest assured, both crimes will be resolved, for they are threads. In the same tapestry, the passengers exchanged uneasy glances. Poirot's words, though polite, carried a weight that made it clear he was not to be trifled with. He turned to Captain Mahmoud. May I have access to Dr. Langston's cabin and his belongings, and perhaps a list of the passengers' movements? Last night? Mahmoud nodded. Of course, Monsieur Poirot. Hassan will assist you. Poirot gestured to Hastings, and the two descended to the lower deck, accompanied by the first mate. The corridor outside Langston's cabin was quiet now, the crew having dispersed to their duties. Poirot entered the room, his eye sweeping over every detail with the precision of a watchmaker. The body had been covered with a sheet, pending the arrival of authorities, but the vial and teacup remained untouched. Poirot knelt beside the bedside table, examining the cup closely. The tea, he murmured. It is the key. The poison was administered here, in this room, between 10 o'clock, when Hassan delivered the tea, and midnight, when the body was discovered. But who brought the poison and how? Hastings frowned. Could it have been suicide, Poirot? Langston was under pressure, wasn't he? All that talk about his work at Abu Simbel. Poirot shook his head. Non mon ami. A man who takes his own life does not scatter his precious notes in such disarray. The notebook. It was dropped, perhaps in a struggle or in haste, and the vial, why leave it so prominently displayed? No, this was murder, staged to appear otherwise. He picked up the notebook. Flipping through its pages, the entries were meticulous, filled with sketches of hieroglyphs and maps of archaeological sites. One page, however, caught his eye. A hastily scrawled note in the margin, "The scarab is the key. Trust no one." Poirot's eyes narrowed and he tucked the notebook under his arm. Returning to the deck, Poirot began his interviews, starting with Miss Wren. The young woman sat trembling, her spectacles fogged with unshed tears. Dr. Langston was brilliant, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He was on the verge of a great discovery, a tomb, he said, that would rival Tutankhamun's. He was obsessed with it. And last night, Poirot asked gently, "What did you observe?" "I saw him at dinner," she replied. "He was agitated about Lady Carver's necklace. He said it was a distraction, that people were too focused on wealth when history was at stake. After dinner, I went to my cabin to work on his notes. I heard nothing unusual." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. He moved on to Gerald Carver, whose nervous demeanor had only worsened. "I was with my aunt most of the evening." Gerald stammered. "We talked about family matters. I retired around 11. "And you heard nothing, saw nothing?" Poirot pressed. Gerald hesitated, his eyes darting to the side. "I thought I heard footsteps in the corridor around 10:30, but I didn't look. I was tired." Poirot's gaze lingered on the young man, but he said nothing, moving on to Mrs. Marlowe. The former actress was composed, her voice smooth as silk. "Vincent and I retired after dinner," she said. "We were in our cabin all evening. I'm afraid I have nothing useful to add." The Contessa, when questioned, offered little. "I observe, Monsieur Poirot," she said, her accent thick, "but I do not interfere. Last night I read in my cabin. I saw no one, heard no one." Beatrice Tate, however, proved more forthcoming. "I couldn't sleep," she admitted. "I was on the deck around 10:15, looking at the stars. I saw Hassan deliver a tray to Dr. Langston's cabin. He seemed in a hurry." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "And did you see anyone else, mademoiselle?" Beatrice hesitated, then shook her head. "No one. But I felt as though someone was watching me." It was unsettling. As the interviews continued, Hastings marvelled at Poirot's method. His questions were deceptively simple, yet each elicited a reaction, a flicker of guilt or fear. The detective was building a map of the night's events, piecing together alibis and inconsistencies with the precision of ACARTOGRAPHER. By midday, the Nefertiti approached a bend in the river, the distant silhouette of ancient ruins visible. On the horizon, Poirot stood at the railing, the notebook still in his hands. "The scarab is the key," he murmured. "What did Dr. Langston mean, Hastings? A literal scarab or a metaphor? And how does it connect to the necklace?" Hastings shook his head. "It's all a muddle, Poirot. The theft, the murder, how do they fit together?" Poirot smiled faintly. "They fit, mon ami, because they must. The mind that planned these crimes is clever, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot. We will find the truth, but first, we must watch and listen. The Nile, it carries secrets, but it also reveals them in time." As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the deck, Hastings felt a growing certainty that Poirot's little grey cells were already unravelling the threads of this deadly puzzle. But the question remained: who among them had the motive, the means, and the cold resolve to kill? Chapter 4. The questions begin. The Nefertiti sailed steadily along the Nile, its gentle sway doing little to ease the tension that gripped its passengers. The sun blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the deck where the air was thick with suspicion and unspoken accusations. The murder of Dr. Felix Langston, coupled with the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, had transformed the luxurious cruise into a crucible of doubt. Captain Arthur Hastings, ever loyal to his friend Hercule Poirot, felt the weight of the unfolding mystery pressing upon him. He stood near the stern, watching the ripples in the Nile's surface, his thoughts a tangle of clues and questions. Poirot, however, was in his element, his precise movements and piercing gaze betraying the relentless activity of his little grey cells. Poirot had commandeered a small salon off the main deck, converting it into an impromptu interview room. The space was elegant yet intimate, with wicker chairs arranged around a low table and a large window offering a view of the river's endless flow. A map of the Nefertiti's layout, provided by Captain Mahmoud, lay spread out on the table, its neatly drawn cabins and corridors marked with the passengers' names. Poirot had also requested a timeline of the previous evening's events, which her son had meticulously compiled, noting the movements of passengers and crew between dinner and midnight. The detective studied these documents with the intensity of a scholar deciphering an ancient text, his fingers tracing lines and pausing at key details. "Mon ami," Poirot said to Hastings, who hovered nearby, "the truth lies in the details, the small inconsistencies, the fleeting glances, the words left unsaid. We must question, observe, and listen, for the murderer is among us, and they will betray themselves." Hastings nodded, though he felt out of his depth. "But where do we start, Poirot? Everyone has an alibi, more or less, and the necklace complicates things. Is it the motive, or a distraction?" Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "A distraction, perhaps, but a purposeful one. The necklace and the murder, they are entwined. Hastings, the thief and the killer may be one and the same, or they may be allies or enemies. We shall see." The interviews began with Lady Evelyn Carver, who entered the salon with the air of a queen summoned to a peasant's court. She sat stiffly, her cream-coloured dress impeccable despite the heat, her eyes flashing with a mix of indignation and impatience. "Monsieur Poirot," she began, "I trust you will resolve this dreadful business quickly. My necklace is still missing, and now poor Dr. Langston. It's intolerable." Poirot inclined his head, his expression polite but unyielding. "Madam, your necklace is of great interest, but let us first address the events of last night. You retired after dinner, oui. At what time, precisely?" Lady Carver frowned, as if the question were an affront. "Around 10:30, I believe. Gerald escorted me to my cabin. We discussed family matters, nothing of consequence. And you heard nothing unusual, no footsteps, no voices, nothing," she said firmly. "I slept soundly until this morning's commotion." Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. "And the necklace, madam, when did you last see it?" Her hand went instinctively to her throat, where the diamonds had once sparkled. "At dinner. Of course, I felt it during the meal, but when I reached for it during dessert, it was gone. Someone took it, Monsieur Poirot, and I expect you to find them." Poirot nodded, making a note in his small leather-bound notebook. "Merci, madam. You have been most helpful." Next came Gerald Carver, whose nervous demeanour had only intensified. He sat twisting his hands, his eyes darting between Poirot and the map on the table. I don't know what I can tell you," he stammered. "I was with my aunt most of the evening, as she said. I went to my cabin around 11 and stayed there." Poirot's voice was gentle but probing. "Monsieur Carver, you mentioned hearing footsteps in the corridor around 10:30. Can you describe them? Were they hurried? Heavy? Light?" Gerald swallowed hard. "Light, I think. Quick, like someone trying not to be heard. But I didn't look, I was preoccupied." "Preoccupied?" Poirot raised an eyebrow. "With what, if I may ask?" Gerald's face reddened. "Just thoughts, family matters. Nothing important." Poirot let the silence stretch, his gaze fixed on the young man until Gerald shifted uncomfortably. "Very well," Poirot said at last. "You may go, but reflect, monsieur, on the importance of truth. It is the only path to safety, miss." Clara Wren was next, her grief still raw. She clutched Dr. Langston's notebook, which Poirot had returned to her for safekeeping. He was a genius, she said, her voice trembling. His work on the Abu Simbel tombs was revolutionary. He believed there was a hidden chamber, one no one had found. Poirot leaned forward, his interest piqued. A hidden chamber, mademoiselle. And did he share this theory with others? Only with me, she said, then hesitated. Well, and perhaps Mr. Marlowe. They argued about it at dinner. Mr. Marlowe wanted to invest in the dig, but Dr. Langston didn't trust him. Poirot's eyes gleamed. An argument, you say? Tell me more. Miss Wren adjusted her spectacles, her hands shaking. Mr. Marlowe kept pressing him, saying the discovery could make them both rich. Dr. Langston said he cared about history, not money. It got heated and Dr. Langston stormed off. Poirot made another note, his expression unreadable. And after dinner, mademoiselle, you were transcribing notes. Did you see or hear anything unusual? She shook her head. I was in my cabin, working. I heard nothing until the commotion this morning. The interviews continued, each passenger offering a piece of the puzzle, though none seemed to fit perfectly. Mr. Vincent Marlowe was brusque, insisting he and his wife had retired early and heard nothing. Langston was a crank, he said, dismissively, obsessed with his ruins, probably drank something he shouldn't have. Mrs. Lillian Marlowe was more guarded, her actress's poise masking any emotion. I was with Vincent all evening, she said smoothly. We went to bed after dinner. I'm afraid I can't help you. The Contessa di Verona was maddeningly vague, her answers cloaked in cryptic phrases. I see much, Monsieur Poirot, she said, her dark eyes glinting, but I do not speak of what I see. Last night I read in my cabin. That is all. Mr. Reginald Tate, the solicitor, was eager to assist, though his verbosity tested Poirot's patience. I retired at 10, as is my habit, he said. Beatrice and I discussed the day's events briefly, then I went to bed. A dreadful business, this murder. Beatrice Tate, however, proved more intriguing. Her calm demeanour belied a keen mind, and her answers were precise. I was on the deck until 10:15, as I told you, she said. I saw Hassan with the tea tray, and I noticed Mr. Marlowe lingering near the corridor entrance afterward. He seemed agitated. Poirot's eyes narrowed. Agitated, mademoiselle, in what way? He was pacing, she said, muttering to himself. I couldn't hear what he said, but he looked unsettled. As the interviews concluded, Poirot returned to the deck where the passengers had gathered in small, uneasy groups. He stood at the railing, the map and timeline tucked under his arm, his gaze fixed on the distant shore. Hastings joined him, sensing the detective's mind was racing. What do you make of it, Poirot? He asked. Everyone claims to have been in their cabins, but someone's lying. Poirot nodded slowly. Oui, mon ami. The alibis. They are like a house of cards seemingly stable, but one false move and they collapse. The footsteps Gerald heard, the agitation Beatrice observed. The argument Miss Wren described, these are the threads we must weave together. He tapped the notebook, and this scarab, Hastings. The scarab is the key. It is no mere metaphor, I think. Dr. Langston knew something worth killing for. As the Nefertiti approached a narrow bend in the river, the passengers' whispers grew louder, their glances more furtive. Poirot's presence, once a curiosity, was now a source of dread, for they knew his questions were peeling back the layers of their secrets. Hastings felt a chill, not from the breeze but from the certainty that the killer was watching, waiting, and perhaps planning their next move. Chapter 5. The red herrings. The sun hung high over the Nile, its relentless heat mirrored by the growing unease aboard the Nefertiti. The murder of Dr. Felix Langston and the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace had cast a shadow over the luxurious felucca, transforming its elegant decks into a stage for suspicion and deceit. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the bow, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him, his soldier's instincts bristling at the undercurrents of tension among the passengers. Hercule Poirot, however, remained a beacon of calm, his meticulous mind sifting through the tangle of alibis and motives with the precision of a master weaver. By midday, the passengers had retreated to the shaded canopy, their conversations hushed and guarded. Poirot, having completed his initial interviews, sat at a small table in the salon, the ship's map and timeline spread before him. His small, neat hands traced the lines of the diagram, pausing at the notations of each passenger's movements. Hastings, hovering nearby, marvelled at the detective's ability to maintain such composure amidst the chaos. Poirot, Hastings ventured, everyone's pointing fingers. But it seems like we're chasing shadows. The police at Aswan will surely take over when we arrive. Do you think we're getting anywhere? Poirot's green eyes gleamed with quiet amusement. Mon ami, the police, they will see only the surface, the body, the vial, the stolen necklace. But Hercule Poirot, he sees the heart of the matter. The shadows, as you call them, are not shadows at all. They are red herrings, placed to mislead. And yet, even a red herring reveals the hand that casts it. Before Hastings could press further, a commotion erupted on the deck. Mr. Vincent Marlowe, his face flushed with anger, stood pointing an accusing finger at Hassan, the first mate. I saw him, Marlowe bellowed, drawing the attention of the other passengers. Last night, skulking around the corridor near Langston's cabin. He's the one who delivered that tea, isn't he? I'll bet he slipped something in it. Hassan, his weary frame tense, shook his head vigorously. I did nothing, sir. I brought the tea as Dr. Langston asked. I left it at his door and returned to my duties. Captain Mahmoud stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Marlowe, please. Hassan is a trusted member of my crew. He has served on this ship for years without incident. Trusted? Marlowe scoffed. He's got sticky fingers, I'd wager. That necklace didn't vanish on its own, and now Langston's dead. It's too convenient. The accusation rippled through the group, igniting murmurs of agreement and dissent. Lady Carver's eyes narrowed, her hand clutching the arm of her chair. It's true, she said sharply. He was everywhere last night, serving drinks, hovering. Who's to say he didn't take my necklace and then deal with Dr. Langston? Poirot rose, his small frame commanding instant silence. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice soft but cutting. Accusations are easy to make, but truth is harder to uncover. Let us examine the facts, not the passions. Monsieur Hassan, you delivered the tea at 10 o'clock. Oui. Did you enter Dr. Langston's cabin? Hassan shook his head, his eyes wide with fear. No, monsieur. I knocked, left the tray outside as he instructed, and went back to the galley. Madame Lefebvre can confirm I was there until after 11. Poirot nodded, his gaze shifting to Marlowe. And you, monsieur, you say you saw Hassan near the corridor. At what time, precisely? Marlowe hesitated, his bluster faltering. Around 10:30, maybe a bit later. I was heading to my cabin after a smoke on the deck. And you saw no one else? Poirot pressed, his eyes narrowing. Marlowe's jaw tightened. No one. Just him, lurking. Poirot turned to the group, his expression serene but probing. And who else was on the deck at this time? Mademoiselle Tate. You mentioned being there until 10:15. Did you see Monsieur Marlowe? Beatrice Tate. Her calm demeanour unshaken nodded. Yes, I saw him near the corridor entrance, as I said. He was pacing, smoking a cigarette. I didn't see Hassan, though. Marlowe's face reddened. Are you calling me a liar, young lady? Not at all. Beatrice replied, her voice steady. I'm simply stating what I saw. The exchange was interrupted by Miss Clara Wren, who rose trembling from her seat. You're all wrong, she cried, her voice cracking. Hassan wouldn't hurt Dr. Langston. He was kind to him, always bringing extra tea when he worked late. You're just looking for someone to blame. Poirot's eyes softened, but his tone remained firm. Mademoiselle, your loyalty is admirable, but let us not dismiss any possibility. Monsieur Hassan, you will permit me to examine your quarters later? Oui, for thoroughness. Hassan nodded, his expression a mix of fear and resignation. Captain. Mahmoud placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, but the crewman's eyes remained downcast. As the group dispersed, Poirot returned to the salon, beckoning Hastings to follow. What do you make of this, Poirot? Hastings asked. Marlowe's accusation seems convenient, doesn't it? He's been loud about everything since we boarded. Convenient, oui, Poirot replied, tapping the timeline. Monsieur Marlowe is eager to point the finger, but his own movements are vague, and Mademoiselle Tate's observation of his agitation most interesting. The red herring. It is not her son, I think, but Marlowe's haste to accuse him. Poirot turned his attention to the map, his finger tracing the corridor outside Langston's cabin. The tea tray was left outside, yet the poison was in the cup. Someone entered the cabin after 10 o'clock. Hastings. Someone who knew Doctor Langston's habits, who could move unseen. Hastings frowned. But who? The alibis are tight. And the corridor was busy that night. Poirot's mustache twitched. Tight, yes, but not impenetrable. The footsteps Gerald heard, the scuff mark on the wall, the spilled tea, these are the threads of truth. And a notebook. He opened Dr. Langston's leather-bound notebook. Pointing to the scrawled note, the scarab is the key. Trust no one. This mon ami is no idle scribble. It is a warning, perhaps a clue to the motive. The afternoon passed with Poirot moving among the passengers, his questions deceptively casual. He spoke to Madame Lefebvre, who confirmed Hasson's presence in the galley until after 11. He questioned Mr. Reginald Tate, who admitted to overhearing a heated exchange between Marlowe and Langston during dinner, though he claimed it was about investments, not murder. The Contessa di Verona remained elusive, her answers cloaked in mystery, while Mrs. Lillian Marlowe deflected Poirot's inquiries with practiced charm. As the sun began to set, casting a fiery glow over the Nile, Poirot gathered the passengers on the deck once more. Mesdames et messieurs, he said, his voice carrying over the gentle lapping of the water. The truth is like the river, it flows, it bends, but it cannot be stopped. Someone among us knows more than they say. I ask you to reflect, to consider what you have seen or heard. The smallest detail may be the key. Lady Carver's voice was sharp. This is absurd, Monsieur Poirot. You're treating us all like criminals. My necklace is still missing, and now you're chasing ghosts instead of finding the thief. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Madam, the thief and the murderer, they are linked. The necklace. It was not stolen for greed alone. It was a signal, a spark to ignite this tragedy. Hercule Poirot will find both, rest assured. As the passengers dispersed, their whispers filled the air, each casting sidelong glances at their neighbours. Hastings watched Poirot, who stood at the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon. You're stirring the pot, aren't you? Hastings said, trying to flush out the killer. Poirot smiled faintly. Oui, mon ami. The red herrings, they distract, but they also reveal. The killer is watching, calculating. But they cannot hide forever, not from Hercule Poirot. The Nefertiti sailed on, its passengers trapped in a web of lies and suspicion. Hastings felt a chill, not from the cooling evening air, but from the certainty that the killer was among them, their identity hidden behind a mask of innocence. And yet, with Poirot's relentless logic at work, that mask was beginning to slip. Chapter 6. A clue in detail. Nefertiti glided through the Nile's glassy waters, the distant silhouettes of ancient ruins looming on the horizon. As the sun dipped toward late afternoon, the air aboard the felucca was heavy with suspicion, the passengers' polite facades fraying under the weight of Dr. Felix Langston's murder, and the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the deck's railing, felt the tension like a taut wire, ready to snap. Hercule Poirot, however, remained the picture of composure, his immaculate linen suit untouched by the heat, his green eyes scanning the passengers with a quiet intensity that seemed to pierce their very souls. Poirot had spent the morning reviewing his notes, cross-referencing the timeline of the previous night with the passengers' alibis. The map of the Nefertiti, spread out in the small salon, was now marked with annotations in Poirot's precise handwriting, times, locations, and small question marks where inconsistencies lingered. Hastings, ever the loyal companion, hovered nearby, his mind wrestling with the puzzle. Poirot, he said, breaking the silence. It's all so tangled. The tea, the vial, the necklace, how do we make sense of it? Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Mon ami, the sense is in the details. A single thread, overlooked by others, can unravel the entire tapestry. We must look closely. Hastings for the clue that does not belong, the detectives. Attention turned to Dr. Langston's notebook, which he had retrieved from Miss Clara Wren. The scrawled note, "The scarab is the key. Trust no one," had become a focal point of his investigation. Poirot flipped through the pages, his fingers pausing on a detailed sketch of a scarab amulet, its intricate carvings rendered with care. Beside it, Langston had written, "Found in secondary dig, Sector 3B, Abu Simbel. Possible link to hidden chamber." Poirot's eyes narrowed and he tapped the page thoughtfully. Before he could share his thoughts, a sharp cry interrupted them. Miss Wren burst onto the deck, her spectacles askew, her face pale with panic. "Monsieur Poirot," she gasped, "it's gone. The scarab, it's not in Dr. Langston's trunk. The passengers, gathered for afternoon tea under the canopy, turned as one, their murmurs rising. Poirot raised a hand for silence, his expression calm but commanding. "Mademoiselle Wren explained, s'il vous plaît." "What scarab?" Miss Wren, trembling, clutched the notebook. "Dr. Langston found it last month during his dig at Abu Simbel. It was a small amulet carved from lapis lazuli, very old. He kept it in his trunk, locked away. I checked just now, and it's missing." Poirot's eyes gleamed with sudden interest. "And when did you last see this amulet, mademoiselle?" "Yesterday morning," she replied, her voice shaking. "He showed it to me before we boarded the Nefertiti. He said it was proof of his theory, a hidden chamber in the temple. He was going to present it to the Cairo Museum." Poirot exchanged a glance with Hastings, who felt a thrill of excitement. A missing scarab, a stolen necklace, a murdered archaeologist. The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, though its shape remained elusive. "This is most significant," Poirot said softly. "Captain Mahmoud, may I inspect Dr. Langston's trunk?" The captain nodded, and Poirot, Hastings, and Miss Wren descended to Langston's cabin. The room was as they had left it, the body now removed to a locked storage area pending the authorities' arrival at Aswan. The trunk, a sturdy leather case, stood in the corner, its lock intact but scratched, as though someone had tampered with it. Poirot knelt, examining the scratches with a magnifying glass he produced from his pocket. "These marks are fresh," he murmured. "Someone attempted to force the lock, but it was opened with a key, I think. Mademoiselle Wren, who else had access to this trunk?" "No one," she said, her voice breaking. "Dr. Langston kept the key on a chain around his neck. I saw it yesterday." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And yet the key is not with his effects. Most curious." He opened the trunk, revealing a neatly organized collection of archaeological tools, notebooks, and a small velvet pouch, now empty. Poirot lifted the pouch, sniffing it delicately. "No dust, no wear," he said. "This was placed here recently, perhaps to replace the scarab." Hastings frowned. "You think the killer took it, but why? And how does it connect to the necklace?" Poirot stood, dusting his hands. "The necklace, the scarab. The murder, they are linked by motive, Hastings. The scarab is no mere trinket. It is a clue to something greater, something Dr. Langston died to protect or to conceal." Returning to the deck, Poirot gathered the passengers, his presence commanding their attention. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice clear and measured, "a new piece of the puzzle has emerged. A scarab amulet, of great value to Dr. Langston, has vanished from his trunk. This is no coincidence. I ask you now, has anyone seen this amulet or noticed anything unusual about Dr. Langston's possessions?" The group exchanged uneasy glances, but no one spoke. Mr. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier bluster subdued, shifted uncomfortably. "What's so special about a bit of stone?" he muttered. "Langston was always going on about his artifacts. Maybe he misplaced it." Poirot's eyes fixed on Marlowe. "Misplaced, monsieur? A man of Dr. Langston's precision does not misplace a find he believed would change history. No, the scarab was taken, just as the necklace was taken. The question is by whom and why? Lady Carver's voice was sharp. This is outrageous. First my necklace, now this scarab. Are we to believe there's a thief running rampant on this ship? Poirot inclined his head. A thief, oui, and perhaps more. But fear not, madam, for Hercule Poirot is on the trail of both. As the passengers dispersed, Poirot beckoned Hastings to the salon, where he spread out the map and timeline once more. Notice, mon ami, he said, pointing to a notation. Hassan delivered the tea at 10, but Beatrice Tate saw Marlowe near the corridor at 10:30. Gerald heard footsteps at the same time, and now the scarab is gone. Its key missing from Langton's body. These are not separate events, they are a sequence. Hastings rubbed his temples. But what does it mean, Poirot? Is the scarab the motive for the murder? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Perhaps it is another red herring, designed to distract. But the detail, Hastings, the scarab's absence, the scratches on the lock, the key gone from Langton's chain, these are the clues that will lead us to the truth. He paused, his gaze drifting to the window where the Nile's surface shimmered like a mirror. And there is another detail, he said softly. During my inspection of the corridor this morning, I found a small fragment of fabric caught on a nail near Langton's door. It is black lace, mon ami, like that worn by the Contessa di Verona. Hastings gasped. The Contessa, but she's so distant. Could she be involved? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Involved, perhaps, but in what way? The lace. It is a clue, but not a conclusion. We must tread carefully, for the killer is clever, and they are watching. As the Nefertiti sailed on, the passengers' whispers grew more frantic, their alibis more strained. Poirot's questions had stirred the pot, and Hastings could sense the killer's unease. Hidden behind a mask of innocence, the scarab, the necklace, the poison, all were pieces of a puzzle that Poirot was steadily assembling, one detail at a time. But the river held its secrets close, and the truth remained just out of reach, shimmering like the Nile's elusive surface. Chapter 7. More lies surfacey, the Nefertiti pressed onward through the Nile's shimmering waters, its graceful progress a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing among its passengers. The sun was sinking toward the horizon, casting a warm golden glow over the river, but the atmosphere aboard was anything but serene. The murder of Dr. Felix Langston, and the thefts of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, and the mysterious scarab amulet had woven a web of suspicion that ensnared every soul on the felucca. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the deck's edge, felt the weight of unspoken secrets pressing upon him, as though the river itself whispered of hidden truths. Hercule Poirot, ever the calm centre of the storm, sat in the small salon, his notebook open, his green eyes glinting with the relentless activity of his little grey cells. The discovery of the missing scarab had sent ripples of unease through the passengers, amplifying their distrust. Poirot's methodical questioning had begun to peel back the layers of their carefully constructed facades, revealing glimpses of motives and grudges that simmered beneath the surface. Hastings, ever loyal but often bewildered by Poirot's cryptic methods, joined him in the salon, where the detective was reviewing the ship's map and timeline, now marked with additional notes in his precise handwriting. Poirot, Hastings said, his voice low, that piece of black lace you found, it points to the Contessa, doesn't it? And Marlowe's accusation against Hassan feels like a diversion. Are we getting closer? Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Closer, oui, mon ami, but the truth is like the Nile's current, visible, yet elusive. The lace, it is a clue, but not a verdict. And Monsieur Marlowe's haste to accuse, it betrays his own unease. We must dig deeper, for the lies, they are beginning to surface. Before Hastings could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Beatrice Tate stood at the door, her usually composed demeanour tinged with urgency. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady but strained, I must speak with you. It's about something I overheard last night. Poirot gestured for her to sit, his expression attentive. Mademoiselle, your candour is most welcome. What did you overhear? Beatrice glanced at Hastings, then back to Poirot, her fingers twisting the edge of her shawl. After I left the deck at 10:15, I passed by the corridor near Dr. Langston's cabin. I heard voices low, angry. I couldn't make out all the words, but I recognized Mr. Marlowe's voice. He was arguing with someone, and I heard him say, "You'll regret crossing me." I didn't think much of it at the time, but after what's happened, Poirot's eyes narrowed. And the other voice, "Mademoiselle, did you recognize it?" Beatrice hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. "I'm not certain, but it sounded like Dr. Langston. I couldn't swear to it, though." The door was closed and the voices were muffled. Poirot nodded, making a note. "Merci. Mademoiselle, this is most significant. Did you see anyone else in the corridor?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "But I watched as I did on the deck." It was unsettling. As Beatrice left, Poirot turned to Hastings, his expression thoughtful. An argument, mon ami, between Marlowe and Langston. And yet Marlowe claims he was in his cabin with his wife after dinner. The lies. They multiply. The evening brought the passengers together for dinner. A tense affair under the canopy. Madame Lefever's meal roasted quail with cumin and a delicate couscous was impeccable, but the mood was sour. Lady Carver, still bristling over her necklace, cast accusing glances at everyone, while Gerald fidgeted beside her, his eyes darting nervously. Miss Wren, her grief tempered by a quiet resolve, sat clutching Langston's notebook, as though it were a lifeline. Mr. Marlowe, his earlier bravado diminished, ate in silence, while his wife, Lillian, maintained her poised facade, though her smiles were strained. The Contessa di Verona, her black lace shawl draped elegantly, watched the group with her usual enigmatic calm. Mr. Reginald Tate attempted to lighten the mood with anecdotes, but his daughter, Beatrice, remained silent, her gaze fixed on her plate. Poirot, seated at the head of the table, observed the group with a quiet intensity. Midway through the meal, he set down his fork and addressed them. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "The events aboard this ship grow more complex. A necklace, a scarab, a murder, these are not isolated incidents. I have learned of an argument last night, one that may shed light on Dr. Langston's death. I ask again, if anyone knows of this dispute, speak now." The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the soft lapping of the Nile against the hull. Marlowe's face reddened and he slammed his hand on the table. "What's this now? You're fishing, Poirot. I told you. I was in my cabin. Whoever's spreading stories is lying." Mrs. Marlowe placed a restraining hand on her husband's arm, her voice smooth. "Vincent, darling, there's no need for that. Monsieur Poirot is only doing his job." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Madam, your calm is admirable. But the truth, it does not hide forever. Someone heard an argument, and it involved Monsieur Marlowe. Perhaps you, too, heard something?" Mrs. Marlowe's smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "I heard nothing, Monsieur Poirot. As I said, we were in our cabin." The Contessa's voice, low and melodic, cut through the tension. "People hear what they wish to hear, Monsieur Poirot, and they see what they wish to see. Perhaps the argument was nothing, or perhaps it was everything." Poirot's gaze lingered on her, the fragment of black lace vivid in his mind. "Most perceptive, madam. But the truth, it is not a matter of wish, it is a matter of fact." As the meal concluded, Poirot requested a private word with Captain Mahmoud. In the captain's small office, the detective examined the cruise log, noting Hassan's movements. "He was in the galley until 11, Mahmoud confirmed." "Madame Lefevre is certain of it." Poirot nodded, then asked, "And the key to Dr. Langston's trunk, has it been found among his effects?" Mahmoud shook his head. "No, monsieur. We searched his cabin thoroughly. The chain was around his neck, but the key was gone." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Most interesting. The scarab, the key, the poison all taken or administered with precision. This is no impulsive crime." Returning to the deck, Poirot found Gerald Carver alone, staring at the river. The young man started as Poirot approached, his face pale. "Monsieur Carver," Poirot said gently, you are troubled. Is there something you wish to share?" Gerald's hands trembled. I didn't tell you everything. Last night, when I heard those footsteps, I looked out my door. I saw someone, a shadow, moving quickly toward the stairs. They were wearing something dark, like a cloak or shawl." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "And you did not mention this before because—" "I was afraid," Gerald admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "My aunt, she's so demanding. If she thought I was hiding something, she'd cut me off. I need her money, Monsieur Poirot. I'm in debt, terribly so." Poirot's expression softened, but his voice was firm. "The truth, monsieur, is your only salvation. This shadow, did you recognize them?" Gerald shook his head. "It was too dark, but it could have been a woman. The way they moved, light and quick." As Gerald hurried away, Poirot turned to Hastings, who had been listening nearby. The lies. They unravel, mon ami. Gerald's debts, Marlowe's argument, the Countess's lace. The missing key, these are the cracks in the facade. The killer thought to hide their tracks, but they have left footprints in the sand. The Nefertiti sailed on, the Nile's surface reflecting the fading light. Hastings felt a chill, not from the evening breeze, but from the growing certainty that the killer was growing desperate. Poirot's relentless probing was stirring the waters, and the truth, like a hidden current, was beginning to rise. Chapter 8. The emotional turning point. Nefertiti sailed steadily through the Nile's tranquil waters, its graceful motion belying the storm of suspicion and fear that raged among its passengers. The setting sun painted the river in hues of amber and crimson, casting long shadows across the deck where the air was thick with unspoken accusations. The murder of Dr. Felix Langston, the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, and the disappearance of the mysterious scarab amulet had woven a tapestry of deceit that seemed to tighten with each passing hour. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the stern, felt the weight of the mystery pressing upon him, his soldier's instincts sharpened by the sense that the truth was tantalizingly close, yet still obscured. Hercule Poirot, ever the master of comprecision, sat in the small salon, his notebook and the ship's map spread before him, his green eyes gleaming with the relentless pursuit of truth. The revelations of the day, Gerald Carver's admission of his debts and the shadowy figure he saw, the fragment of black lace, and the heated argument overheard between Vincent Marlowe and Dr. Langston, had stirred the passengers into a state of uneasy agitation. Poirot's methodical questioning had begun to chip away at their carefully crafted alibis, and Hastings could sense the killer's growing desperation. Like a cornered animal waiting to strike dot as twilight settled over the Nefertiti, the passengers gathered for dinner under the canopy, the atmosphere heavy with tension. Madame Lefever's meal, grilled fish with tamarind and a fragrant rice pilaf, was impeccable, but few had an appetite. Lady Carver, her face a mask of indignation, sat rigidly, her eyes darting suspiciously. Gerald, beside her, was pale and silent, his fingers twisting a napkin into knots. Miss Clara Wren, clutching Dr. Langston's notebook, seemed on the verge of tears, her grief tempered by a quiet resolve. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier bluster subdued, ate mechanically, while his wife, Lillian, maintained her poised facade, though her smiles were strained. The Contessa di Verona, draped in her signature black lace, sipped her wine with an enigmatic calm, her dark eyes scanning the group. Mr. Reginald Tate attempted to fill the silence with legal anecdotes, but his daughter, Beatrice, remained quiet, her sharp gaze missing nothing. Poirot, seated at the head of the table, observed the group with his usual intensity. Midway through the meal, he set down his glass and addressed them, his voice soft but commanding. "Mesdames et messieurs," he said, "the events aboard this ship grow ever more tangled, but the truth, it is like the Nile, it flows toward its destination. Tonight, I have learned of debts, of arguments, of a shadow in the night. Someone among us knows more than they have said. I ask you now, in the name of justice, to speak." The silence that followed was oppressive, broken only by the gentle lapping of the river against the hull. Then, to everyone's surprise, Miss Clara Wren stood, her hands trembling as she clutched the notebook. "I can't keep silent any longer," she said, her voice breaking. Dr. Langston. He wasn't just my employer. I loved him. A collective gasp rippled through the group. Lady Carver's eyes widened and Gerald's napkin fell to the table. Marlowe's jaw tightened, while his wife's expression remained unreadable. The Countess's lips curved in a faint, knowing smile, and Beatrice Tate's gaze sharpened. Poirot leaned forward, his eyes gentle but probing. Mademoiselle Wren, this is a revelation most significant. Tell us, s'il vous plaît, what do you mean by this, love, and how it relates to the events of last night? Clara's face crumpled, tears spilling down her cheeks. I never told him, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He was so consumed by his work, by the scarab and the hidden chamber. But I saw how he looked at Mrs. Marlowe. I heard them talking once, late at night, during the dig at Abu Simbel. She was encouraging him, flattering him. I think she wanted something from him, the scarab, maybe, or his research. Mrs. Marlowe's composure faltered, her hand tightening around her glass. That's absurd, she said, her voice sharp. I barely knew Dr. Langston. We spoke a few times about his work, nothing more. Clara's eyes flashed with sudden anger. You're lying. I saw you with him weeks ago in Cairo. You were laughing, touching his arm. And last night, after dinner, I saw you near his cabin. You were there, weren't you? The accusation hung in the air, electrifying the group. Marlowe's face reddened and he half rose from his chair. Now see here, you're accusing my wife of what, exactly? Murder? Theft? This is nonsense. Poirot raised a hand, his voice calm but firm. Monsieur Marlowe, please. Mademoiselle Wren. You saw Mrs. Marlowe near Dr. Langston's cabin. At what time, precisely? Clara hesitated, wiping her tears. Around 10:20, maybe 10:30. I was going to my cabin after transcribing his notes. She was standing near the corridor, looking secretive. Mrs. Marlowe's eyes narrowed, but her voice remained steady. I was nowhere near the corridor, Miss Wren. I was with Vincent in our cabin. You're mistaken, or perhaps you're trying to deflect suspicion. Clara's sob broke the tension, and she sank back into her chair, clutching the notebook. Poirot's gaze swept the group, noting every reaction, the Countess's faint smile, Beatrice's sharp attention, Gerald's nervous fidgeting, Lady Carver's pursed lips. Mademoiselle Wren, he said gently, your courage is commendable. But let us be clear. Did you see Mrs. Marlowe enter Dr. Langston's cabin? Clara shook her head, her voice small. No, I only saw her standing there. But I know what I saw. Poirot nodded, making a note. Merci, mademoiselle, this is a piece of the puzzle, but not the whole. We must continue to seek the truth. As the dinner concluded, the passengers dispersed, their whispers buzzing like insects in the evening air. Poirot beckoned Hastings to the salon, where he added Clara's revelation to his timeline. An affair, or the perception of one, Poirot murmured, tapping his pen. Miss Wren's love for Langston, her jealousy of Mrs. Marlowe, these are motives, Hastings. But are they the motive for murder? Hastings frowned. It's possible, isn't it? Clara could have been jealous enough to do something desperate. Or maybe Mrs. Marlowe wanted the scarab for herself. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Possible. Oui, but the truth is more complex. The black lace, the missing key, the spilled tea, these are the details that will lead us to the killer. And now, Miss Wren's confession, it is the crack in the dam, mon ami. The lies. They begin to flood. Later that evening, Poirot sought out the Contessa di Verona, finding her alone on the deck, her black lace shawl catching the moonlight. Madam, he said, his voice soft, you observe much, yet say little. The fragment of lace I found near Dr. Langston's cabin does. It belonged to you? The Contessa's smile was enigmatic. Monsieur Poirot, lace is common enough, but if you suspect me, you must have more than a thread to weave your case. Poirot inclined his head. A thread, madam, is enough to begin. The truth, it will come, whether you speak it or not. As the Nefertiti sailed on, the Nile's surface reflecting the stars, Hastings felt a shift in the air. Clara's confession had broken the silence, exposing raw emotions and hidden connections. The killer, he sensed, was growing uneasy there. Carefully laid plans unraveling under Poirot's relentless scrutiny. The truth was closer now, but it remained just beyond reach, shimmering like the river's elusive depths. Chapter 9. The trap. The Nefertiti glided through the Nile's inky waters, the moon casting a silvery glow over the deck as the night deepened. The air was thick with tension, the passengers' nerves frayed by the relentless march of Hercule Poirot's investigation, the murder of Dr. Felix Langston, the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, and the disappearance of the scarab amulet had woven a web of suspicion that tightened with each revelation. Captain Arthur Hastings, standing near the railing, felt the weight of the mystery like a storm gathering on the horizon. Poirot, ever the calm center, moved with a quiet purpose, his little grey cells working tirelessly to unravel the threads of deceit. The emotional outburst from Miss Clara Wren at dinner, her confession of love for Dr. Langston, and her accusation against Mrs. Lillian Marlowe had cracked the passengers' facades, exposing raw motives and hidden tensions. Poirot, sensing the killer's growing unease, had decided it was time to apply pressure, to set a trap that would force the truth into the open. He had spent the evening in the small salon, reviewing his notes and the ship's map, his fingers tracing the timeline of the fatal night. Hastings, hovering nearby, could sense the detective's anticipation. As though he were a chess master positioning his pieces for checkmate, Poirot, Hastings said. Breaking the silence, Clara's confession stirred things up, didn't it? Do you think she's telling the truth about Mrs. Marlowe, or is she just jealous? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Jealousy, mon ami, is a powerful lens it distorts, but it also reveals. Mademoiselle Wren's words have shaken the board, and now we must watch how the pieces move. Tonight, we set a trap for the killer who's growing restless. Poirot's plan was simple yet cunning. He announced to Captain Mahmoud that he would gather the passengers after dinner in the main salon for a discussion of the evidence. He instructed Hassan to ensure the room was prepared, chairs arranged in a semicircle, the map and timeline prominently displayed, and a small table, set with a single object, an empty velvet pouch, identical to the one that had once held the scarab amulet. The killer, Poirot explained to Hastings, will see this pouch and wonder, does Poirot know more than he says? The guilty mind. It cannot resist the bait. As the passengers assembled in the salon, the atmosphere was electric with apprehension. Lady Evelyn Carver sat with her usual imperious air, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Gerald Carver, beside her, was pale and fidgety, his hands twisting a handkerchief. Miss Clara Wren, her spectacles fogged with nervous perspiration, clutched Dr. Langston's notebook tightly. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier bravado diminished, sat with a scowl, while his wife, Lillian, maintained her poised elegance, though her fingers toyed nervously with her necklace's simple gold chain, a stark contrast to Lady Carver's missing diamonds. The Contessa di Verona, draped in her black lace shawl, watched the proceedings with her enigmatic calm, her dark eyes unreadable. Mr. Reginald Tate, the solicitor, cleared his throat repeatedly, while his daughter, Beatrice, sat quietly, her sharp gaze taking in every detail. Poirot stood at the center of the semicircle, his small frame commanding the room. The velvet pouch sat on the table, its presence drawing covert glances from the passengers. "Mesdames et messieurs," he began, his voice soft but resonant, "we are gathered to confront the truth. A man is dead, a necklace stolen, a scarab amulet vanished. These are not random acts, they are the work of a mind, clever and calculating. But no mind, however clever, can outwit Hercule Poirot." He paused, letting his words settle, his eyes scanning the group. "Let us review the night of Dr. Langston's death. At 10 o'clock, Hassan delivered a tray of tea to his cabin door. At 10:15, Mademoiselle Tate saw Monsieur Marlowe pacing near the corridor. At 10:30, Monsieur Carver heard footsteps, light and quick, and saw a shadow in a dark cloak or shawl. And Mademoiselle Wren, you saw Madame Marlowe near the corridor around the same time. Is this correct, Clara nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, Monsieur Poirot, I'm certain of it." Mrs. Marlowe's lips tightened, but she said nothing. Marlowe, however, erupted. "This is outrageous. My wife was with me in our cabin. You're letting a jealous girl spin tales to save herself." Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. "Monsieur Marlowe, your protests are noted, but let us proceed. The tea contained poison cyanide, I believe. From the residue in the vial found beside Dr. Langston's body, the scarab amulet. A key to his research was taken from his trunk, its key, missing from the chain around his neck. And then, there is this." He gestured to the velvet pouch, his eyes watching the group closely. Gerald Carver's hand twitched, and he glanced nervously at his aunt. The Countess's fingers tightened on her shawl, the black lace rustling. Faintly, Mrs. Marlowe's gaze flickered to the pouch, then away, her composure faltering for a moment. Beatrice Tate's eyes narrowed, as though calculating something, while Miss Wren clutched the notebook tighter, her knuckles white. "This pouch," Poirot continued, "is empty now, but it once held the scarab. I wonder who among you knows where it is, or perhaps who took it." The silence was oppressive, broken only by a sharp intake of breath from Lady Carver. "Are you suggesting," she said, her voice icy, "that one of us stole this scarab as well as my necklace? This is beyond insulting." Poirot's smile was serene. "Madam, the truth is never an insult, it is a liberation. Let us consider motives. Dr. Langston's research promised a great discovery, a hidden chamber at Abu Simbel. The scarab was its key. Monsieur Marlowe, you argued with him about funding his dig, oui? And Madame Marlowe, you were seen near his cabin. Monsieur Carver, your debts are heavy, and your aunt's necklace would ease them. Mademoiselle Wren, your love for Dr. Langston was unrequited, perhaps fueling jealousy. And Madame la Contessa, a piece of your lace was found near the crime scene. Each of you has a secret, a reason to act." The Countess's eyes gleamed. "You weave a fine net, Monsieur Poirot, but you have yet to catch your fish." Poirot inclined his head. "The net, madam, is tightening. And now, I ask you all to consider. What did you see? What did you hear? That you have not yet shared. The truth will come with or without your help." As the passengers exchanged uneasy glances, Poirot stepped closer to the table, lifting the velvet pouch. "This pouch, it is a symbol. The killer took the scarab, believing it would hide their crime. But they have left traces, footsteps, lace, lies. Speak now, or the truth will speak for you." The room seemed to hold its breath. Then, to everyone's shock, Beatrice Tate stood, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "Monsieur Poirot, I saw something else that night. After I left the deck, I passed by the galley. I saw Hassan, but he wasn't alone. There was someone with him, a woman in a dark shawl. I couldn't see her face, but they were whispering, and she handed him something small, like a key." Hassan, standing at the door, paled. "That's not true," he cried. "I was in the galley, yes, but alone. Madame Lefebvre can confirm it." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "We shall see, monsieur. The trap, it has been sprung. The killer, they are among us, and they are afraid." As the passengers dispersed, their whispers frantic, Hastings followed Poirot to the deck. "You're pushing them, Poirot," he said. "That pouch, was it really a trap?" Poirot nodded, his expression grave. "Oui, mon ami. The pouch is empty, but the killer does not know that. They will act, they will betray themselves. The lace, the key, the shadow, these are the threads, and now we pull." The Nefertiti sailed on, the Nile's surface a mirror of stars. Hastings felt a chill, sensing the killer's desperation growing. Poirot's trap was set, and the truth was closer than ever, lurking in the shadows of the felucca's elegant decks. Chapter 10. The revealed Nefertiti lay anchored under the starlit sky, its silhouette a dark shadow against the Nile's shimmering surface. The air was heavy with anticipation, the passengers' nerves stretched taut by Hercule Poirot's relentless probing. The murder of Dr. Felix Langston, the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, and the disappearance of the scarab amulet had woven a complex web of deceit. And now, In the main salon, Poirot was ready to unravel it. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the door, his heart pounding, sensing that the moment of truth was at hand. The passengers, summoned by Poirot for a final gathering, sat in a tense semicircle, their faces a mix of fear, suspicion, and guarded curiosity. The salon was dimly lit by oil lamps, casting flickering shadows across the wicker chairs and the table at the center, where the empty velvet pouch Poirot's trap sat like a silent accusation. The ship's map and timeline, marked with Poirot's meticulous notes, was spread beside it. Lady Evelyn Carver sat rigidly, her eyes blazing with indignation. Gerald Carver, her nephew, fidgeted nervously, his hands twisting a handkerchief. Miss Clara Wren, clutching Dr. Langston's notebook, looked pale and fragile, her spectacles glinting in the lamplight. Vincent Marlowe's scowl was etched deep, while his wife, Lillian, maintained her poised facade, though her fingers trembled slightly. The Contessa di Verona, draped in her black lace shawl, watched with an enigmatic calm. Mr. Reginald Tate cleared his throat repeatedly, while his daughter, Beatrice, sat with quiet intensity, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Captain Mahmoud and Hassan stood at the edges, their faces grave. Poirot stood at the center, his small frame commanding the room, his green eyes gleaming with the certainty of revelation. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice soft but resonant. We have reached the moment of truth. A man is dead, a necklace stolen, a scarab amulet taken. These crimes, they are not random, they are the work of a single mind, clever and calculating, but not cleverer than Hercule Poirot. He paused, letting his words settle, his gaze sweeping the group. Let us reconstruct the night of Dr. Langston's death, step by step, using the little grey cells. At 10 o'clock, Hassan delivered a tray of tea to Dr. Langston's cabin, door as requested. At 10:15, Mademoiselle Tate saw Monsieur Marlowe pacing near the corridor, agitated. 10:30, Monsieur Carver heard footsteps, light and quick, and saw a shadow in a dark cloak or shawl. Mademoiselle Wren saw Madame Marlowe near the corridor at the same time. And then there is the piece of black lace found near Dr. Langston's door, and the scarab amulet taken from his trunk, its key missing from the chain around his neck. The passengers shifted uneasily, their eyes darting to one another. Poirot lifted the velvet pouch, holding it aloft. This pouch, it was a trap designed to unsettle the guilty, and it has worked. For the killer has betrayed themselves through their actions and their lies. Lady Carver's voice was sharp. Get to the point, Monsieur Poirot. Who is the killer? Who stole my necklace? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. Patience, madam. The truth, it unfolds like a lotus blossom, petal by petal. Let us begin with the necklace. It was stolen during dinner when all eyes were distracted. The thief was swift, precise, and knew Madame Carver's habit of touching her diamonds. Only one person was close enough, with the opportunity and the motive. He turned to Gerald Carver, whose face paled. Monsieur Carver, your debts are heavy, are they not? You admitted to me your dependence on your aunt's fortune. The necklace, it was a temptation too great to resist. You took it, slipping it from her neck during a moment of distraction, perhaps when she reached for her glass. Gerald's hands shook, his voice a whisper. I didn't kill anyone, yes. I took the necklace, I admit it. I needed the money, but I didn't touch Langston. Lady Carver gasped, her hand flying to her chest. Gerald, you ungrateful boy. Poirot raised a hand, silencing her. Oui, monsieur, you stole the necklace, but you are not the murderer. The theft, it was the spark that set this tragedy in motion, for it drew attention to Dr. Langston's cabin where the true crime occurred. He turned to the group, his voice steady. Dr. Langston was poisoned with cyanide, administered in his tea. The vial was left to suggest suicide, but the scattered notebook, the missing scarab, and the absent key tell a different story. The killer entered his cabin after 10 when the tea was delivered. They added the poison, took the scarab, and removed the key to cover their tracks. But who had the means, the motive, and the opportunity? Poirot's gaze settled on Mrs. Lillian. Marlowe. Madame Marlowe, you were seen near the corridor at 10:30. Despite your claim to have been in your cabin with your husband, you knew Dr. Langston from Cairo, where you flattered him, perhaps seeking his research or the scarab itself. Your husband argued with him about funding the dig, but you had a deeper interest, did you not? Mrs. Marlowe's composure cracked, her eyes flashing. This is absurd. I was nowhere near his cabin. Clara's mistaken, she's jealous, trying to frame me. Poirot shook his head. Non, madam. Mademoiselle Wren's jealousy revealed the truth, but it is not she who lies. The footsteps, the shadow, the lace, they point to another. He turned to the Contessa di Verona, whose faint smile faltered. Madame la Contessa, the piece of black lace found near the door, it is yours, is it not? You were seen by Mademoiselle Tate, whispering with her son in the galley, handing him a small object, perhaps a key. You moved through the corridor that night, silent and swift, your shawl catching on a nail as you entered Dr. Langston's cabin. The Contessa's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Poirot continued, his voice relentless. Your motive, it was the scarab. Dr. Langston's research threatened to uncover a secret. You have guarded a connection to the black market in antiquities, perhaps the scarab. It was not just a key to a hidden chamber, but to your own secrets. You poisoned Dr. Langston to silence him, took the scarab to protect your interests, and left the vial to suggest suicide. The room erupted. Marlowe shouted, "This is madness," while Clara sobbed, clutching the notebook. Lady Carver's face was a mask of shock, and Gerald buried his face in his hands. The Contessa, however, remained calm, her voice low and steady. "You have no proof, Monsieur Poirot. A piece of lace, a whispered conversation, these are nothing." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Non, madam, the proof is in the details. The key to the trunk, it was found this evening, hidden in the lining of your shawl. Discovered when her son, under my instruction, searched your cabin. And the scarab, it is no longer on this ship. It was sent ashore at our last stop to an associate of yours, no doubt. But the Nile, it keeps no secrets, and neither does Hercule Poirot." The Contessa's face paled, her composure crumbling. "You cannot prove this," she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. Poirot turned to the group. "The necklace, it was recovered from Monsieur Carver's cabin this evening, confirming his confession. The murder, it was the work of the Contessa, driven by greed and fear. The truth, it is clear, and justice will follow." As Captain Mahmoud stepped forward to restrain the Contessa, the passengers sat in stunned silence. Hastings, his heart racing, marvelled at Poirot's genius. The trap had worked, the lies exposed, and the truth, like the Nile, had flowed to its inevitable conclusion. Chapter 11. The reflection they Nefertiti lay anchored under the starry canopy of the Egyptian night, the Nile's gentle ripples reflecting the moonlight like a scattering of diamonds. The air aboard the felucca was heavy with the aftershock of Hercule Poirot's dramatic revelation. The passengers, still reeling from the unmasking of the Contessa di Verona as Dr. Felix Langston's murderer, and the recovery of Lady Evelyn Carver's stolen necklace from Gerald Carver's cabin, had dispersed to their quarters, their whispers trailing like ghosts through the corridors. Captain Arthur Hastings stood at the deck's railing, the cool night breeze soothing his nerves, which were frayed from the evening's intensity. Hercule Poirot, his linen suit still immaculate despite the hour, joined him, his green eyes gleaming. With quiet satisfaction, the salon where the confrontation had unfolded was now empty. The velvet pouch and ship's map cleared away. The Contessa, under Captain Mahmoud's watchful guard, had been confined to her cabin until the Nefertiti reached the Swan, where the authorities would take over. Gerald Carver, shamed by his confession to stealing his aunt's necklace, had retreated in disgrace, his future uncertain. The other passengers, Miss Clara Wren, Vincent and Lillian Marlowe, Mr. Reginald Tate, and Beatrice Tate had retired in silence, their faces a mix of relief and unease. The truth had been revealed, but its weight lingered, a reminder of the darkness that had lurked among them. Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "You did it, Poirot. You unravelled it all, the necklace, the scarab, the murder. But how did you know it was the Contessa? That piece of lace, the key, it was so subtle. Poirot's moustache twitched with a faint smile. Mon ami, the truth, it is always in the details. The little grey cells, they observe what others overlook. The lace. It was a thread literally and figuratively that led to the Contessa. Her calm, her enigma, they were a mask for a mind calculating and ruthless. The scarab. It was a prize, a link to her dealings in the black market for antiquities. She could not allow Dr. Langston to reveal its significance, for it would expose her. Hastings nodded, though his mind still raced, and Gerald. I never thought he'd steal from his own aunt. But murder, no, he wasn't capable of that. None. Poirot agreed, his gaze fixed on the river. Monsieur Carver's crime was one of weakness, of desperation. His debts drove him to theft, but not to violence. The Contessa. However, she saw opportunity in the chaos of the necklace's theft. It was a distraction, a way to mask her own actions. She poisoned Dr. Langston, took the scarab, and left the vial to suggest suicide. But the key, hidden in her shawl, and the lace caught on the nail, these were her undoing. Hastings shivered. Despite the warm night air, it's chilling, Poirot, to think she sat among us so composed, while planning such a thing. And Miss Wren, her confession about loving Langston, her jealousy of Mrs. Marlowe that threw us off, didn't it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Oui, mon ami. Mademoiselle Wren's emotions, they were raw, sincere, but they clouded her judgment. Her accusation against Madame Marlowe was a red herring, born of jealousy, but it served to unsettle the group, to make the killer feel the net tightening. The trap. It was not just the velvet pouch, it was the pressure of truth, forcing the guilty to act. He paused, his fingers steepled beneath his chin. The human heart, Hastings, it is a complex thing. Greed, love, fear, these are the currents that drive men and women to crime. The Contessa, she was driven by greed for the scarab's secrets. Gerald, by fear of ruin. Mademoiselle Wren, by unrequited love. Each played their part, but only one crossed the line into murder. Hastings leaned against the railing, his thoughts drifting to the passengers. What will happen to them now? Gerald, and the Contessa, of course. Poirot sighed. Softly. The Contessa, she will face justice in a swan. The authorities will investigate her connections to the antiquities trade, and I suspect they will find much to uncover. As for Monsieur Carver, his aunt may forgive him, or she may not. His crime was theft, not murder. But the shame, it will follow him. The others, Madame Marlowe, Mademoiselle Wren, Mademoiselle Tate, they will carry the memory of this voyage, a reminder that secrets, they do not stay buried. The Nile's gentle lapping filled the silence, a soothing counterpoint to the weight of Poirot's words. Hastings looked at his friend, marveling at the clarity of his mind. You always see it, don't you? The truth, no matter how tangled it gets. Poirot's smile was wistful. Not always, mon ami, but often enough. The little grey cells, they are disciplined, methodical. They seek order in the chaos of human nature, and yet, I confess, each case leaves its mark. To see the darkness in men's souls, it is a burden, even for Hercule Poirot. He straightened, adjusting his straw hat with a precise motion. But come, Hastings, let us not dwell on the shadows. The Nile, it is beautiful tonight, is it not? A river of life, of history, of secrets revealed. Let us enjoy its serenity, for tomorrow we face the authorities, and the work of justice continues. Hastings nodded, following Poirot as he strolled. Along the deck, his small figure a silhouette against the moonlit river. The Nefertiti seemed quieter now, its passengers subdued, the weight of the truth settling over them like dust. For Poirot, the case was closed, the puzzle solved. But Hastings knew his friend's mind was already turning to the next challenge, the next mystery waiting in the Wing's Daughter as they reached the bow. Poirot paused, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The world, Hastings, it is full of puzzles, but the little grey cells, they are equal to the task. Always we seek the truth, for it is the only path to order. With that, he turned and retired to his cabin, leaving Hastings alone with the Nile's endless whispers. The river, like Poirot, held its secrets close, revealing them only to those who knew how to listen. and as the Nefertiti sailed toward Aswan, Hastings felt a quiet awe for the man who had once again brought light to the darkness, his logic and compassion a beacon in the chaos of human nature. Chapter 12. The aftermath. Nefertiti glided toward Aswan under the pale light of dawn. The Nile's surface a mirror of soft pinks and golds as the sun rose over the desert horizon. The felucca's elegant decks, once alive with the chatter of wealthy travelers, now bore a somber stillness, the weight of Hercule Poirot's revelations settling over the passengers like a heavy fog. The unmasking of the Contessa di Verona as Dr. Felix Langston's murderer, and Gerald Carver as the thief of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, had left the ship in a state of quiet shock. Captain Arthur Hastings stood at the bow, his hands gripping the railing, his thoughts a whirl of relief and unease. The truth had been uncovered, but its ripples continued to disturb the fragile peace aboard. Hercule Poirot, immaculate as ever in his linen suit and straw hat, joined Hastings, his small frame exuding a calm authority. His green eyes, sharp and reflective, scanned the river as though the Nile itself might offer one final clue. The Contessa remained confined to her cabin under Captain Mahmoud's guard, her enigmatic facade shattered by Poirot's relentless logic. Gerald, humiliated by his confession, avoided the other passengers, his shame a palpable presence. The rest Miss Clara Wren, Vincent and Lillian Marlowe, Mr. Reginald Tate, and Beatrice Tate moved through their routines with a subdued air, their interactions marked by guarded glances and hushed tones. Poirot, Hastings said, breaking the silence, "You've done it again. The Contessa, Gerald, it all fits, doesn't it? But I can't help feeling there's something more, some loose end we've missed." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Mon ami, your instincts, they are admirable. But sometimes they see shadows where there is only light. The puzzle, it is complete. The Contessa killed Dr. Langston to protect her secrets in the antiquities trade. Gerald stole the necklace to ease his debts, the scarab, the lace. The key, these were the threads, and they are now woven into a tapestry of truth." Hastings frowned, unconvinced. But what about Miss Wren's accusation against Mrs. Marlowe? And Beatrice's claim about seeing a woman with her son in the galley? Could there be another layer to this? Poirot's eyes gleamed with amusement. Always seeking the complication, Hastings. Mademoiselle Wren's jealousy clouded her judgment, but it served to unsettle the Contessa, to make her fear exposure. Mademoiselle Tate's observation, it was truthful, but it was a misdirection. The woman with her son was not the Contessa, but Madame Lefebvre. Discussing the next day's menu, the little grey cells, they sift through such distractions to find the core of the matter. The morning passed with the passengers gathered on the deck for breakfast, a strained affair overseen by Madame Lefebvre's impeccable service. Lady Carver, her diamond necklace recovered but her trust in her nephew shattered, sat in icy silence, her eyes fixed on the horizon. Gerald was absent, confined to his cabin by choice or his aunt's command. Miss Wren, her grief for Dr. Langston, tempered by the resolution of his murder, sat clutching his notebook, her fingers tracing its edges as though seeking solace in his words. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier accusations against her son retracted, spoke little, while Lillian maintained her poised elegance, though her smiles were tinged with relief. Mr. Reginald Tate attempted to lighten the mood with legal anecdotes, but his daughter, Beatrice, remained quiet, her sharp eyes watching Poirot with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Captain Mahmoud approached Poirot as the meal concluded, his expression grave but respectful. "Monsieur Poirot, we will reach Aswan by midday. The authorities have been notified and will meet us at the dock. The Contessa will be handed over, and they will take charge of Monsieur Carver's case as well." Poirot nodded, his expression serene. "Merci, Captain. The wheels of justice, they turn, and Hercule Poirot is content to have set them in motion." As the passengers dispersed, Poirot invited Hastings to the small salon, where he reviewed his notes one final time. The map and timeline, now marked with the resolution of each clue, lay spread before him. "Observe. Mon ami," he said, pointing to the notations. "The footsteps at 10:30. Heard by Gerald, they were the Contessa's, moving to Langston's cabin. The lace caught on the nail Hercule betrayed her. The key, hidden in its lining, her final mistake. The scarab, sent ashore to her confederates, it was her motive, but also her downfall. Hastings nodded, marvelling at the clarity of Poirot's reasoning. And the necklace? Gerald's theft really was separate, wasn't it? Oui, Poirot replied. A crime of opportunity, but one that served to distract. The Contessa used the chaos of the theft to mask her own actions, believing it would obscure her crime. But the little grey cells, they see through such diversions. A sudden commotion interrupted their conversation. Miss Wren appeared at the door, her face pale, and her hands trembling. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice quivering, "I found something in Dr. Langston's notebook. I didn't notice it before it was tucked in the back, hidden in a flap." She handed Poirot a small, folded piece of paper. He opened it carefully, revealing a sketch of the scarab amulet, annotated with a single sentence, "The chambers. Secret lies with the one who guards the river." Poirot's eyes narrowed, and he tucked the paper into his pocket. "Most interesting, mademoiselle," he said. "This confirms what I suspected. The scarab was more than a relic. It was a key to a greater discovery, one the Contessa sought to control. You have done well to bring this to me." As Miss Wren left, Hastings leaned forward. "What does it mean, Poirot? The one who guards the river. Is there another accomplice?" Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. The note is Dr. Langston's. Final clue. A reference to his research, perhaps to a guardian figure in the temple at Abu Simbel. It is no longer our concern. The authorities will pursue the scarab's trail. For us, the case is closed." As the Nefertiti approached the Swan, the passengers gathered on the deck, their faces a mix of relief and apprehension. The distant city shimmered in the heat, its minarets and palms a promise of resolution. Poirot stood at the railing, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his expression one of quiet triumph. "Hastings," he said softly, "the Nile. It is a river of secrets, but also of truth. We have navigated its currents, and we have prevailed. Let us now leave the rest to justice, and to the river's endless flow." Hastings nodded, feeling a sense of closure, though the memory of the Nefertiti's deadly voyage would linger. The passengers, their secrets laid bare, would carry the weight of this journey forever. But for Poirot, the case was another triumph of logic, a testament to the power of his little grey cells. As the ship docked at a Swan, the authorities waiting. On the shore, Hastings knew that Poirot's work was done, and the Nile, like the truth, would continue its eternal journey. Chapter 13. The shadows of truth. The Nefertiti rested at the dock in a Swan, its elegant form tethered to the shore as the Nile's gentle current lapped against its hull. The midday sun blazed overhead, casting sharp shadows across the deck where the passengers gathered in a subdued cluster, their faces etched with the strain of the past days. The revelation of the Contessa di Verona as Dr. Felix Langston's murderer, and Gerald Carver as the thief of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, had brought a semblance of closure, yet an undercurrent of unease lingered, as though the river still held secrets yet to be revealed. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the gangplank, watching as the Egyptian authorities boarded the ship, their uniforms crisp despite the heat. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his linen suit, stood beside him, his green eyes reflective as he surveyed the scene. The authorities, led by a stern-faced Inspector Cannell, had taken the Contessa into custody, her wrists bound discreetly as she was escorted off the Nefertiti. Her enigmatic calm had given way to a steely silence, her dark eyes betraying no emotion as she passed the passengers. Gerald Carver, pale and hunched, followed under guard, his confession to the theft weighing heavily on him. Lady Evelyn Carver watched her nephew with a mixture of fury and sorrow, her recovered necklace now locked in the captain's safe, a bitter reminder of familial betrayal. The other passengers, Miss Clara Wren, Vincent and Lillian Marlowe, Mr. Reginald Tate, and Beatrice Tate stood in a loose semicircle, their expressions a mix of relief and apprehension as the authorities began their inquiries. Hastings leaned toward Poirot, his voice low. "It's over, isn't it, Poirot? The Contessa, Gerald, the truth is out, and justice will take its course." But I can't shake the feeling that we've missed something. That note in Langton's notebook, the one who guards the river, it's still nagging at me." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile. "Mon ami, your instincts. They are persistent, like the Nile itself. The note, it is a curiosity, oui, but it pertains to Dr. Langton's research, not to the murder. The Contessa killed him to protect her dealings in the Quitty's trade, and the scarab was her prize. The note, it is a matter for archaeologists, not for Hercule Poirot." Hastings frowned, unconvinced. "But what if there's more to it? What if the Contessa had an accomplice? Someone we haven't suspected?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with amusement. Always the romantic, Hastings, seeking the twist within the twist. "But the little grey cells, they are satisfied. The lace, the key, the poison, these are the facts. And they point to the Contessa alone. An accomplice, it would require evidence we do not have." As the authorities continued their work, Poirot and Hastings retreated to the small salon where the ship's map and timeline still lay, now redundant in the wake of the resolution. Poirot gathered his notes, his movements precise, as though putting the case to rest with the same care he had applied to solving it. The truth. "Mon ami," he said, "it is like the Nile's current, sometimes hidden, but always flowing, toward its destination. We have followed it, and we have arrived." Before Hastings could respond, Beatrice Tate appeared at the door, her calm demeanor tinged with urgency. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice steady but low, "I need to speak with you. It's about something I remembered, something I didn't mention before." Poirot gestured for her to sit, his expression attentive. "Mademoiselle Tate, your observations have been most valuable. What have you remembered?" Beatrice clasped her hands, her sharp eyes meeting Poirot's. "The night of the murder. When I saw the woman with her son in the galley, I said I couldn't see her face, but I've been thinking, and I'm certain it wasn't Madame Lefebvre as she claimed. The woman was taller, her movements more deliberate, and the shawlet wasn't black lace, but something darker, heavier, like wool." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his fingers steepling beneath his chin. "Most interesting, mademoiselle. And this object she handed to Hassan, you said it was small, like a key. Did you see anything else?" Beatrice hesitated, then shook her head. "No, it was too dim. But I'm sure it wasn't Madame Lefebvre. I should have spoken sooner, but I was afraid of causing more trouble." Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have done well to tell me now. The truth, it is never too late to emerge." As Beatrice left, Hastings turned to Poirot, his unease growing. "Poirot, this changes things, doesn't it? If it wasn't Madame Lefebvre with her son, then who was it? Could there be another player in this game?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Possibly, mon ami, but we must not leap to conclusions. Mademoiselle Tate's memory, it is valuable, but it is also late. The Contessa's guilt is clear. The lace, the key, her motives, this new detail. It may be a distraction, or it may be a shadow of another truth. For now, we must trust the evidence." The afternoon wore on with Inspector Callell questioning the passengers and crew, his methodical approach a pale echo of Poirot's brilliance. Miss Wren, her grief softened by the resolution of Langton's murder, handed over the notebook to the authorities, its final note about the one who guards. The river sparking brief interest but no immediate answers. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier accusations against her son withdrawn, spoke gruffly of his relief, while Lillian maintained her poised silence, her eyes avoiding Poirot's. Mr. Reginald Tate offered legal advice to the inspector, while Beatrice watched quietly, her revelation lingering in the air. As the authorities prepared to depart with the Contessa and Gerald, Poirot stood at the railing, his gaze fixed on the Nile. "The river, Hastings," he said softly. "It carries the past and the future, the seen and the unseen. This case, it is closed, but the shadows of truth, they linger. Perhaps, mademoiselle, Tate's memory will lead the authorities to another thread, perhaps not. For Hercule Poirot, the work is done." Hastings nodded, though his mind still churned with questions. The Nefertiti, its decks now quiet, seemed to exhale as though relieved of its burden. The passengers, their secrets exposed, faced an uncertain future, but the river flowed on, indifferent to their turmoil, as the authorities both pulled away. Carrying the Contessa and Gerald to justice, Hastings felt a pang of finality, tempered by the faint echo of Beatrice's words. The truth, as Poirot had said, was like the Nile, eternal, elusive, and ever-flowing. Chapter 14. The echoes of the Nile Nefertiti remained docked at a swan, its elegant form swaying gently in the Nile's current, as the afternoon sun bathed the city in a golden haze. The departure of the Contessa di Verona and Gerald Carver, with the Egyptian authorities, had brought a fragile calm to the felucca, but the air was still thick with the residue of suspicion and unease. The passengers, their secrets laid bare by Hercule Poirot's relentless logic, moved through the ship with a subdued air, as though the weight of the truth had anchored them to the deck. Captain Arthur Hastings stood near the bow, his gaze fixed on the bustling shore, where merchants and travellers mingled under the shadow of ancient palms. Hercule Poirot, his linen suit pristine despite the heat, joined him, his green eyes reflecting the river's endless flow. The resolution of Dr. Felix Langston's murder and the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace had been a triumph of Poirot's little grey cells. Yet Beatrice Tate's late revelation about the woman in the galley, a figure not Madame Lefebvre, but someone taller in a heavier shawl, had planted a seed of doubt in Hastings' mind. He turned to Poirot, his voice low. Poirot, I know you're certain the Contessa acted alone, but Beatrice's story about the woman with her sonnets still bothering me. What if there's another piece to this puzzle? Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint smile, his fingers adjusting his straw hat with precision. Mon ami, your persistence. It is like the Nile itself, unrelenting. Mademoiselle Tate's memory, it is intriguing, oui, but it does not alter the truth. The Contessa's guilt is clear. The lace, the key, the motive tied to the scarab and her antiquities dealings. The woman in the galley, it may have been a misunderstanding, a trick of the light. The little grey cells, they do not find a second killer in the evidence. Hastings frowned, unconvinced. But what about that note in Langston's notebook? The one who guards the river? It feels like there's more to this. Something tied to his research that we haven't fully uncovered. Poirot's expression softened, his gaze drifting to the river. The note, it is a scholar's obsession, a clue to Dr. Langston's dream of a hidden chamber at Abu Simbel. It is for the archaeologists to pursue, not for Hercule Poirot. Our task was to find the murderer, and we have done so. The shadows, they may linger, but they do not change the light of truth. The passengers gathered for a late lunch under the canopy, their mood sombre despite Madame Lefebvre's exquisite spread of spiced lamb and fresh figs. Lady Carver, her diamond necklace, now safely stored, sat with a regal air, though her eyes betrayed a lingering hurt over Gerald's betrayal. Miss Clara Wren, her grief for Dr. Langston softened by the resolution of his murder, sat quietly, her fingers tracing the edges of his notebook, now in the hands of the authorities. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier accusations against her son silenced, ate with a gruff reserve, while Lillian Marlowe maintained her poised elegance, her smiles carefully measured. Mr. Reginald Tate, ever the talkative solicitor, spoke of legal proceedings in Cairo, while Beatrice Tate watched the group with her sharp, observant gaze. Her earlier revelations still weighing on her. Captain Mahmoud approached Poirot, his expression one of gratitude. Monsieur Poirot, the authorities are satisfied with your findings. They have taken the Contessa and Monsieur Carver to Cairo for further investigation. The scarab, they believe, may lead to a larger network of antiquities smuggling. Your work has been invaluable. Poirot inclined his head, his voice modest. Merci, Captain. Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth, and it is my pleasure to serve justice. As Mahmoud returned to his duties, Beatrice Tate approached, her demeanour hesitant, but determined. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice low, I can't stop thinking about what I saw in the galley. I know you believe the Contessa acted alone, but I'm certain that woman wasn't Madame Lefebvre. I don't want to cause trouble, but could I have been wrong? Poirot's eyes softened, though his tone remained firm. Mademoiselle Tate, your honesty is commendable. The mind, it can play tricks, especially in the dim light of a ship's galley. But let us consider, if there was another woman, what was her role? The evidence, the poison, the lace, the key points to the Contessa. A second conspirator would require a motive we have not seen, a connection we have not found. Rest assured, the authorities will pursue all leads. Beatrice nodded, though her expression remained troubled. I suppose you're right. It's just this ship. This river, it feels like there are still secrets hiding in the shadows. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The Nile, mademoiselle, it is a river of secrets, but also of revelations. Trust that the truth, it will find its way. As Beatrice returned to her father, Hastings leaned toward Poirot. She's not convinced. Is she? And neither am I, entirely. What if the Contessa was working with someone else, someone who slipped through your net? Poirot's gaze was steady. If such a person exists, mon ami, they are a shadow without substance. The evidence, it is clear, and the authorities will follow the trail of the scarab. For us, the case is closed and we must look to the future. The afternoon passed with the passengers preparing to disembark, their bags packed and their thoughts turned to the world beyond the Nefertiti. Miss Wren, clutching a small bundle of Dr. Langston's papers, spoke of returning to Cairo to assist with his research, determined to honor his memory. The Marlowes, their tensions eased by the resolution, spoke of continuing their travels, though Lillian's guarded glances suggested lingering unease. Mr. Tate and Beatrice planned to return to London, their holiday marred but their bond strengthened by the ordeal. As the passengers began to leave the ship, Poirot and Hastings stood at the gangplank, watching the exodus. The Nile stretched before them, its surface shimmering with the promise of new journeys. Poirot, Hastings said, "Do you ever wonder if you've missed something? A detail, a clue that changes everything?" Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet certainty. "Always. Mon ami, but the little grey cells, they are vigilant. The truth, it is like the river. It may twist, it may turn, but it always reaches its destination. We have done our part, and now we let the Nile carry on." As the last of the passengers disembarked, Poirot adjusted his hat and stepped onto the shore, his small figure a beacon of order amidst the chaos of human nature. Hastings followed, his heart lighter but his mind still touched by the echoes of the Nefertiti's secrets, wondering if the river would ever reveal its final truths. Chapter 15. The river's fair wealth. Nefertiti stood docked at a swan, its elegant silhouette framed against the Nile's shimmering expanse, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm amber glow over the city's ancient stones. The Felucca, once a stage for opulence and intrigue, now bore the quiet scars of its recent drama: the murder of Dr. Felix Langston, the theft of Lady Evelyn Carver's diamond necklace, and the unmasking of the Contessa di Verona as the killer, and Gerald Carver as the thief. The passengers had begun to disembark, their faces marked by a mix of relief and lingering unease, as though the river's secrets still whispered in their ears. Captain Arthur Hastings stood on the deck, his hands resting on the railing, his gaze lost in the Nile's endless flow. Hercule Poirot, his linen suit pristine and his straw hat perfectly angled, joined him, his green eyes reflecting a quiet satisfaction tempered by the weight of human frailty. The Egyptian authorities had concluded their initial inquiries, taking the Contessa and Gerald into custody for transport to Cairo. The scarab amulet, believed to be en route to the Contessa's confederates in the antiquities black market, was now a matter for the police to pursue. The passengers, Miss Clara Wren, Vincent and Lillian Marlowe, Mr. Reginald Tate, and Beatrice Tate had gathered their belongings, preparing to leave the Nefertiti behind. Yet Beatrice's late revelation about the mysterious woman in the galley, distinct from Madame Lefebvre, lingered in Hastings' mind, a faint ripple in the otherwise still waters of the case's resolution. "Poirot," Hastings said, his voice low, "it's done, isn't it? The Contessa, Gerald, the truth is out and we're free to move on. But I can't help wondering about Beatrice's story. That woman with her sonnets like a loose thread, tugging at me." Poirot's mustache twitched with a faint, indulgent smile. "Mon ami, your heart, it is ever restless, seeking the shadow beyond the light. The case, It is closed. The Countess's guilt is proven by the lace, the key, the motive. Mademoiselle Tate's memory, it is a detail, perhaps a trick of perception. In the dim light of the galley, the little grey cells, they are content with the truth we have uncovered. Hastings nodded, though a flicker of doubt remained. And that note, the one who guards the river. You're sure it's just about Langston's research, nothing more? Poirot's gaze drifted to the Nile, its surface catching the fading light. Hastings. The note, it is Dr. Langston's dream, a clue to his hidden chamber at Abu Simbel. It is for others to follow now, the archaeologists, the authorities. Hercule Poirot, he has done his part, bringing order to chaos. The passengers gathered on the deck for a final farewell, their mood subdued but tinged with a sense of release. Lady Carver, her diamond necklace secured and her pride wounded by Gerald's betrayal, stood with regal dignity, her eyes fixed on the shore as though eager to leave the Nefertiti behind. Miss Wren, her grief for Dr. Langston softened by the justice served, clutched a small bundle of his papers, determined to carry on his work in Cairo. Vincent Marlowe, his earlier bluster replaced by a gruff acceptance, stood beside Lillian, whose poised facade held firm, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of relief. Mr. Reginald Tate, ever verbose, spoke of returning to London, while Beatrice, quiet and observant, watched Poirot with a mix of admiration and curiosity. Captain Mahmoud approached, his expression one of deep gratitude. Monsieur Poirot, your work has saved this ship from further tragedy. The authorities are satisfied, and the passengers, they owe you their peace of mind. If ever you return to the Nile, the Nefertiti will welcome you. Poirot inclined his head, his voice modest. Merci, Captain. Hercule Poirot seeks only the truth, and it is my honor to serve it. The Nile, it is a river of beauty and mystery, and I shall remember it always. As the passengers began to disembark, Miss Wren lingered, approaching Poirot with a shy smile. Monsieur Poirot, I want to thank you. Dr. Langston's work, it meant everything to him, and now, because of you, his killer has been found. I'll make sure his research reaches the right hands. Poirot's eyes softened. Mademoiselle, your devotion, it is a testament to his legacy. Carry it forward, and let the truth be his monument. As Miss Wren stepped onto the gangplank, Beatrice Tate approached, her sharp gaze meeting Poirot's. Monsieur Poirot, she said, her voice steady, I know you think I was mistaken about the woman in the galley, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to this. I hope I haven't caused trouble. Poirot's smile was gentle but firm. Mademoiselle Tate, your vigilance, it is a gift. If there is more to uncover, the authorities will find it. Trust that the truth, like the Nile, will flow to its proper end. Beatrice nodded, though her expression remained troubled, and followed her father to the shore. The Marlowes were the last to leave, Vincent offering a curt nod to Poirot, while Lillian's parting glance held a trace of something unreadable gratitude, perhaps. Or lingering unease dot as the deck emptied, Poirot and Hastings stood alone, the Nefertiti quiet except for the soft creak of its timbers and the lapping of the river. Hastings turned to his friend, his heart lighter but his mind still touched by questions. Poirot, do you ever doubt yourself, even a little? That note, Beatrice's story, it feels like there could be another chapter to this. Poirot's eyes gleamed with quiet certainty. Doubt, mon ami, it is the shadow that sharpens the light. But the little grey cells, they do not falter. The Countess's crime, it is clear. Gerald's theft, it is confessed. The scarab's trail, it is for others to follow. For us, the journey is complete. He adjusted his hat with a precise motion and stepped toward the gangplank, his small figure a beacon of order amidst the chaos of human nature. Come, Hastings, he said, his voice warm. The Nile, it has given us its secrets, and now it bids us farewell. Let us return to the world where other puzzles await. Hastings followed, his steps lighter as they crossed to the shore, the Nefertiti fading into the twilight behind them. The Nile stretched on, its surface a mirror of stars, carrying its secrets into the night. For Poirot, the case was a triumph. a testament to his unrelenting logic. For Hastings, it was a reminder of the river's eternal mystery, its currents whispering of truths yet to be uncovered. As they stepped into the bustling streets of Aswan, the Nefertiti's story closed. But the Nile, like Poirot's mind, flowed ever onward, serene and unfathomable.